Welcome to Industry Outlaws United, I.O.U for short. I'm your host, Brandon E. Brooks. This is another great episode. It's going to be, we have an amazing guest that's honored us this afternoon with his presence. We usually have a little small talk at the beginning of the show, but I just want to give a shout out to my Indie Escape brothers, Joe Ridgely, and all the other cats that are here on the network. And I want to give a special thanks to my Subsoil Films brother, Tim Melican, for backing me up today. And without further ado, can we please play our tribute video for today's guest? To Industry Outlaws United, I.O.U for short. I'm your host, Brandon E. Brooks. This is another great episode. It's going to be, we have an amazing guest that's honored us this afternoon with his presence. We usually have a little small talk at the beginning of the show, but I just want to give a shout out to my Indie Escape brothers, Joe Ridgely, and all the other cats that are here on the network. And I want to give a special thanks to my Subsoil Films brother, Tim Melican, for backing me up today. And without further ado, can we please play our tribute video for today's guest? Absolutely outstanding. All right, without further ado, welcome to I.O.U. actor, martial artist, stuntman, screen legend, Richard Norton. How are you, Richard?
Good, thank you, Brandon. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. It's an honor. I've been a huge admirer of your work for decades, so it's a privilege to have you here this afternoon. Thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So I always ask every guest at the beginning to start at the start. Can you tell our audience where you were born and raised?
I was born in a suburb of Melbourne, Australia, Victoria's state. So Melbourne's probably 20 miles out of the center of the city of Melbourne. It used to be called the bush where I was, the bush meaning lots of trees and everything else and not much else. Very different now, of course.
Now, were you an extroverted or introverted kid? Like at an early age, did you have a knack for like showbiz, like some kids are dancing and performing, or were you more of an introvert at an early age?
No, I would tend to say introverted. I mean, showbiz and performing and having a career like I ended up having was not something that I ever planned on or expected to have. It just kind of happened, which we can talk about. Sometimes it's just a matter of circumstances, and it's a matter of you get presented with opportunities, and do you dare to take that opportunity and run with it, or do you sort of stay in your little comfort zone? And again, growing up as a kid in Croydon, it was just a small little town. Couple of friends, they used to box with and wrestle with and everything. Started martial arts together, but that was it. If you'd asked me, this question a lot of people have asked, well, could you have foreseen the type of life you would have? Well, there's no possible way. As a skinny little asthmatic kid from Croydon, as I always call it, and then to have the fun journey that I've had, I've been very fortunate.
So martial arts. So did you start that at an early age? I know, like I read by high school, you had already kind of advanced to a certain point where that would lead us into some of my questions about the bodyguarding and everything. But did you start martial arts at an early age?
Yeah, 11 years of age. I started in 1961. I'm 73 in January.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a long journey. But 1961, I started judo. And as I've said in a lot of these, that judo was about the only martial art around in Australia then. You had boxing, of course, and you had wrestling. But as a martial art, and it was a few years later that two school friends of mine told me about a karate demonstration that was being staged a few miles from where I lived, went along, and that was the start of an incredible journey for me. That was a karate demonstration, and off I went, and that would have been in the mid-60s, 1966, I believe, before I left high school, that I got into karate, and that just sort of spawned a whole lot of life experiences and journeys within the martial arts world.
Yeah. Now, some of our past guests from Art Camacho and even Olivier Gruner said that some of it spawned from bullying, some of it spawns from just the confidence level and things like that. Were you trying? What does martial arts mean to you when you found it? Was it? Did you have a underneath purpose for kind of starting it and excelling like you did?
No, I didn't, meaning that I wasn't in a rough neighborhood. Of course, the normal stuff that would go on in any neighborhood, but nothing excessive. And I certainly wasn't being sort of stalked by gangs and everything else and being bullied. But I would say a certain amount of the impetus was the fact that, as an 11-year-old, I was very small, in stature, quite skinny. I used to get asthma as a kid. So one would think maybe that's, I used to read, I don't know when they started, but the old Weeder magazines, bodybuilding magazines, and watch the amazing bodybuilders and just dream of actually having a bit of muscle, a bit of size. I would guess that goes with your self worth, and the way you think you're perceived in the world. And I've also, again, as I said, judo was the only thing, and there were ads literally on the back of comic books for judo, which intrigued me, but not from the point of view that I wanted to be this amazing fighter. There was just some mystical lure to those ads that when my friend who moved into a house opposite to where I lived, when I was 11, he was disappearing 2 nights a week. And I said, "Oh, Morris, where are you going?" And he told me he was going to judo classes, and man, I just couldn't I was chomping at the bit to get there and give that a try. And then when the karate started, off I went. And I've often said, and I truly mean it with a bit of soul searching, that as cliche as it sounds, I just believe that was what I was meant to do with my life, was to be a martial artist. And again, it's a journey that still is going on some 60 years later. So, one would think that was the truth, at the start of my journey.
Okay, great. So this journey led you into, how did the celebrity bodyguarding and all of that kind of come to fruition for you? Did you get hooked up by somebody in the Hollywood realm, or like how did that begin for you?
No, that started. My first karate teacher was a sensei named Tino Severano, Hawaiian Filipino. He'd been in Australia not even 6 months when I started training with him as a result of that demonstration I went to. And at the same time, a year later, another gentleman named Bob Jones, who was 10 years older than I was, I met him through the Goju-Ryu it was, or Goju Kai classes that I was attending. Bob was already a bit of a legend in the security world. He ran a security agency. He was doing door work, as a bouncer on different, I always laugh when I say discos, it really dates me, but there were discotheques back there. And of course,
yes,
pubs, which are prevalent in Australia, as everybody knows about Aussies. They like to have a drink. So, Bob already had a bigger reputation, and we formed a really close friendship. In 1970, Bob decided he wanted to sort of start his own style, his own expression of martial arts that were a little more to do with reality-based, meaning incorporate boxing, judo, wrestling into what was then a very blinkers-on attitude to martial arts. He wanted to make it kind of effective for a lot of his workers. The bouncers and door people were the first students we had. So we had to sort of gear our club to cater for that. And so I started working on doors at these clubs when I was still a teenager for Bob. So that was my intro into security work. And it was would have been 72 or 73, that an entrepreneur in Australia, Paul Dainty, who is still, in fact, he's just got Guns N' Roses out there as we speak. That's how long he's been around. But he gave Bob a call and wanted to know if we would look after the Rolling Stones on their tour to Australia in 73 as their personal bodyguards. And of course, we jumped at the opportunity. And that really started this whole touring profession, being a personal bodyguard, because Paul would use us for any of the big acts he brought out. I worked with, Bob and I worked with the Stones, with Joe Cocker, Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks, Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, et cetera, et cetera. I ended up through that working as personal bodyguard for David Bowie for 8 years, and Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor for 14 years, because cutting into that, I digress a bit. I moved to the US in 1979.
Okay.
At the request of Linda. Linda wanted me to come out and work for her full time in the US, as a bodyguard. I mean, I don't know what else she would call me. And off I went. It was a big decision for me. I thought, I'm comfortable. I'm teaching. I've got clubs here. I've got a girlfriend here. Everything's very settled. And it was actually Linda that said to me when I was umming and ahhing, she said, look, why don't you try it? You can always go back home. And that was put the idea in my, you know what, you're right. I've got to dare to what I call step out of my comfort zone and take a plunge. And Brandon, I can't even imagine what my life would have been today had I not taken that opportunity. And again, stepped away, gone into such a strange environment for me, an Aussie kid, right? And then up in America. And I ended up working for the next, until the early 90s, touring with all the different bands, worked with ABBA. And as I've already mentioned, a lot of the other ones. And it was when and again, sorry, I'm messing into incorporating a lot of different topics here, but it's all background. Okay. Bob went over to the States in 1978 just to have a look at the martial arts scene, ended up meeting Chuck Norris and inviting Chuck out to Australia. And Chuck was in the early stages of his career. He had Breaker Breaker and Good Guys Wear Black. So he was interested in a promotion for that. And we brought him out. Bob and I staged the very first kickboxing matches ever in Australia. And I ended up demonstrating, because Bob and I were partners in what was called Zendo Kai then, our own particular brand of martial art. I ended up demonstrating martial art weapons, et cetera, and doing some kata and forms. And Chuck did his thing. We just got on amazingly well. And Chuck had said to me, if you ever end up in the US, look me up. Let's do some training, which you can imagine what an attractive invitation that was for someone like me. Again, not even thinking that the following year I'd actually be in the US. So here I end up in California with Linda, and the first person I called was Chuck. Started training with him every morning at his house in Rolling Hills Estates out past LAX Airport. And Chuck was in the early stages of the Octagon.
Yes.
One of the first ninja movies. And he asked me, because he knew I could handle weapons and everything, he asked me if I would be interested in playing his nemesis, Kyo, in the movie. And that's what started the movie career.
Okay.
It wasn't something I'd ever planned on coming out to America during the movies. Again, it was a matter of circumstance. And so off I went. You know, there was 4 of us, Aaron, Norris, Chuck's brother, and a couple of others, and myself did most of the ninja stunt work, and I played the character of Kyo.
Yep.
Also, Long Legs, he was called, one of the terrorists.
Yes.
Actually see my face, because as you know, Kyo had a crimson mask on.
Oh, yeah. It's a cool mask.
Because technically, from the script point of view, I was supposed to be Asian. So that just started everything off, you know, and I'm on the set with the most amazing martial artists, Philip and Simon Ree, who have gone on edits and everything in the movie, and Keith Vitale. There's a whole slew of people. I'm thinking, oh my God, how good is this? I mean, I'm still getting to be a martial artist and use my martial arts skills and actually making a living out of this. And it was a pretty exciting time. I ended up doing, you know, a few more movies with Chuck, some episodes of Walker, and then got the opportunity to get leads in my own movies, and off we went.
So so that's, I mean, again, Kyo, that's an iconic horror. I mean, not horror film, but in ways horrific, but action film. But as a first timer, were there nerves, or was because you were in your like you were in a good place, obviously, as a martial artist? Was it a transition to hit the marks and to do that like stage choreography at first off for you, or did it just kind of
Yeah, no, of course it was an incredible learning curve, but no nerves, because I, you know, being so close with Chuck, you know, would have been training every day. In fact, I've got old black and white footage of us figuring out those fights, and the fight that Kyo had with Chuck in his backyard, you know, with Aaron. And so we'd already figured a lot of it out. And for me, it was just an extension of what I was already doing. Like, let me put it this way. I didn't know anything about film to be nervous about it. You know, it was like, oh yeah, this is fun. Yeah. Of course, I always laugh. I get on the set, and you know, the first line I've ever had in a movie was "sit down" as Long Legs. I'm a terrorist, and I'm telling Chuck to sit down, or all the terrorists. And in my head, I thought, oh God, how easy is this? You know, Academy Award coming up here. You know, and suddenly I get there and I've got to say it out loud. And I suddenly realize there's about 8 ways to say sit down. I could say sit down, sit down, sit down. I went, oh shit, there's more to this. The eye, which prompted me to look, you know, ask Chuck who his acting coach was, and off I went and started training with a lady named Zena Provendy, who used to be MGM's acting coach, because I just realized that doesn't happen by accident. Sure, there's people that are pretty natural in front of the camera, but it's a bit like choreography and lines. There's a real similarity in that. If you're improvising, say your martial arts, or I'm talking to you like I'm talking, I'm speaking the way I speak, I'm using my words, but you know, you realize that you're now having to say somebody else's lines in a way that you don't necessarily speak, and deliver them for real, as though for the first time, as well as take on the character of being a terrorist, which I'm not. Yeah. So you go, well, heck, there's a lot in this. And that's, again, when I understood that I need to do some homework if I'm going to continue on doing this. And choreography is the same, which is a whole other area. When we first got on the set, you can't, it's, martial artists think, well, you're going to movie set, you're just doing another martial arts demonstration. Well, you're not. First of all, it's a bit like Dancing with the Stars. You have to be totally in sync with whoever you're fighting, whether it's one or a number. And it's still choreography. They're like lines of a script. Well, there's choreography that you can't deviate from because it's dangerous if you're swinging your weapon out and you just improv. So that's all got to be very scripted. Everything's got to work to camera. You can do the best punch, best sword cut or whatever. It doesn't work for that lens, then it's useless and can't be used. So that's what I mean about a learning curve, hitting your mark, hitting your mark. Am I blocking somebody else? So not only are you focusing on what you have to do as the actor and the choreography or the lines, but you're also very aware of all this set sort of mechanics going on. So there's a lot to it, but
absolutely.
So it's nerve-wracking in one sense, because obviously you don't want to look like a dick when the whole thing comes out. Plus you got 100 people standing there watching you perform, which can send you. But
So I've heard the arduous stories and seen a ton of documentaries about the work rate in China. So we're kind of piggybacking off what you just said. Like, talk about a little bit about that, because I've watched all the Millionaires Express and those things, and you talk about how sometimes they are really hitting each other, and there are a lot of things over there that are different than American choreography.
Yeah, there's a lot different. First of all, you say sometimes they're hitting each other. No, they're always hitting each other, including me. Yeah, that was a very different eye-opening experience for me. I remember, it was a ex-partner of Chuck's named Pat Johnson, who ended up being coordinator on the Karate Kid movie and lots of other things. Amazing martial artist. He was the one that suggested to Jackie that I might be a good one for his movies, because Pat had worked on The Big Brawl, which is one of the first movies Jackie shot here in the States, the US. So anyway, I eventually got the call. I'm on a plane heading over to work in a film called Twinkle, Twinkle, Lucky Stars, directed by the legendary Sammo Hung, and of course starring Sammo as well as Jackie Chan, Andy Lau. Oh man, the amount of people in that movie that later on became unbelievable actors in their own right that I only realized later. But anyway, so I'm heading off thinking, I'll be able to do this and I'll do a bit of this, all the stuff that I like to do. Well, of course you get there, and I'm also thinking 10 to 12 hour days. But again, as people have probably heard me say a lot, when the drama's on, there's not much attention given to the drama. I mean, it's incidental back then to those movies. Jackie knew that kids didn't want to go and see a whole lot of talking heads. They wanted to see the fights, right? So it was pretty easy going until we started the fight stuff. And my first fight scene was with Sammo. It took 3.5 weeks. And I kid you not, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week on set. And it's not that you're fighting every moment, because the difference with an American movie, you will completely figure out the action sequence. Shoot a master, and then you'll go and do over shoulder, insert, foot hitting, draw, or whatever. In other words, you know exactly what that fight. It's very scripted before you start. In Hong Kong, there's almost no script. They're making it up as they go. That includes the context of the fight, the content of the fight, and how long it's going to be. So when I'm doing with Sammo, he would be figuring out, after doing a quick little bit of editing on the hour or two he had off, where he wanted the fight to go, how long he wanted it to last, et cetera, et cetera. The result being that I have no idea what I'm going to be asked to do the next day. Like, I couldn't prepare for it. You're on camera, and there's no rehearsal. Everything was shot on camera. You wouldn't rehearse the stuff beforehand. You're pretty much left to copying whether it's a Jackie or a Sammo or some of the stunt crew wanted you to do. And you would do it as many times as it took to get a sequence they were happy with. And that might be 30 takes. It could be 40 takes. Not often less than 10. So it's grueling, you know, and they would do a sequence of 3 or 4 or 5 moves, pull out a stunt mattress, lie down, and then think what the next moves would be. So it was exhausting. I mean, I was about, I would have only been about 175 pounds, a lot lighter than now because of COVID. Thank you very much. You know, and I remember being in the studio. There was no air conditioning. It was like 110 degrees, and I think I lost something like 20 pounds over that period of time, which was a lot for me. But you know what? I was always in good shape. I trained hard. I was confident in my abilities, and I could get through it. I didn't mind the contact. I mean, I didn't like it, but I didn't mind it.
No major injuries along the way, or
no. And look, you know, I've said before on a lot of these podcasts, I copped full-fisted bare uppercuts under the chin here, just because they wanted to see my face contorting in slow motion. I got sidekicked against the wall 20,000 times, but I was okay, you know, which I, by the way, is one of the reasons I got a lot more work in Hong Kong, because I learned very early to just shut up and just do whatever they wanted as many times, because they really were that good at what they did. Now, you can argue that's a very different style to an American movie, but an incredible following throughout Europe, probably less so in America, you know, but in a lot of the Asian countries, they just love that style of action. So I just had to shut up and get on board and become almost like a caricature to fit into those movies, you know? Yeah. And that's the other thing. Somebody asked me a while ago, were you nervous heading off to do a movie with the legendary Jackie Chan? I said, well, not really, because I didn't really know much about him. Like, I didn't watch all the Hong Kong movies and do all that sort of stuff. So for me, it was just another gig, you know? It's only 20, 30 years later when you tell these stories and you see some guy's eyes do this, that you realize what an incredible opportunity that was to work with the absolute best in the action genre.
Absolutely. So I grew up loving Jim Cotta. So that character of Zamir. So you were the fight choreographer on this film, correct? Like as well on top of that. So what was there like working with an Olympian like Kurt Thomas, was there a learning curve for him for you to work through in that film for his fighting? Or again, there's a lot of things that kind of like, there's a lot of kind of intricate things going on there. So you as the choreographer, was that a task?
Yes. Now you know how that film started was Freddie Weintraub, who I know you know, but Freddie was one of the heads of production in Warner's, and he, of course, was producer of Enter the Dragon. Yes. I did a lot of movies with Freddie, Force 5, you know, Ray, you know, there's a lot of movies. Anyway, Freddie wanted me to do this, and his idea was to create almost like an American Jackie Chan. Because of the acrobatic ability, it was the Peking Opera School produced the Sammo Hungs, you know, Yun Bill, Jackie Chan. He then thought a Kurt Thomas, a great-looking young kid, an Olympic-level gymnast, would be perfect. The problem is, Kurt, bless his heart, as you know, Kurt passed away some years ago now. It was very sad, and obviously an incredible athlete, but couldn't punch to save his life. And so I went to Florida. Kurt had he was based in Florida and had a gymnastics tumbling show, they call it, where they do all their vault horsing. For audiences. So I went there in order to pre-train Kurt, giving the tools that we felt he needed for this movie and the fights. And look, you know, as you can imagine, when you do action scenes in a movie and you're asking that person or that actor to do all their own fights, you're of course limited by that actor's ability. Yeah. So a lot of the choreography was very much, and this is not a put down at all, because Kurt did an amazing job. And God, if he got me on the mat trying to do a backflip, I would kill myself. So, you know, I mean, their abilities in different areas, and it just took a lot of work. And it's funny, even he and I laughed afterwards when you see there was one fight in the courtyard where he's fighting all these villagers, and there's supposed to be a thing that you tie goats up to. Well, it's obviously a pommel horse, you know. In the middle
yes, exactly.
Right, and there's another hanging bar that he did some stuff. So in other words, the difference between what Kurt could do, Kurt needed almost to have gymnasium-like facilities to do what he did, which was very separate to the Hong Kong boys. They can do that shit on anything, on bricks, on road, on dirt. That's why they're so amazing. They could do these skills no matter what the environment. And so that made it a little more difficult for Jim Carter, even though it turned out to be a fun little action movie. But they're the obstacles you run into. So yeah,
it still came out to be, like I said, a fun movie. So again, more fun movies like that we're about to talk about. You've built an epic fight career, like on film for decades, obviously. But some of those films that like were early ones for me, the ones in China and the ones that moved to America, featured the Queen of Martial Arts, Cynthia Rothrock. So my question for you is, why was that magic between the two of you? Where did that come from between the two of you on screen? Because from the like I said, the films overseas to the films, the China O'Brien series, The Rage and Honor, all those films, there was a chemistry there that is undeniable. So was that just a friendship, or was that just two great martial artists? They were actors as well. Like how did that mesh for you?
Well, I first heard about Cynthia when I was filming in Hong Kong. I'd heard on set some of the English, people that got work on the sets were telling me about this blonde-haired, blue-eyed American doing films there. I'd never met Cynthia. And, of course, we ended up working together on Millionaires Express, Sammo Hung movie, again with Jackie and Yun Bill and everybody. And then, of course, we did Magic Crystal. As far as chemistry, you never know. You can't manufacture that, meaning you work with people. You either have chemistry or you don't.
Exactly, yeah.
You can try and act it, but it just turned out that we just got along so well. And I think, I don't know whether you saw, but I love an early referral that one critic wrote that Cynthia and I were like the Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire of martial art. Yeah,
that's what I said. Like, it's undeniable when you watch it. Like, even their chemistry, acting together in those China O'Brien films, and the fights are amazing. But a lot of times in the American films, you were on the same side, except a couple. But no, that's. Obviously, you guys are friends, great friends, or whatever that have built over the years. But I just, like I said, I've been on sets and I've had to fight people that I didn't particularly care for just because of their attitudes or whatever. And sometimes as an actor, it's the same thing. Like there's a female that doesn't necessarily think I'm good looking enough or whatever. So there's just not the chemistry. But as an actor, you just make it work. But it was undeniable with you and Cynthia is my point.
Yeah, thank you. No, and we're still very, very close friends. We did 8 or 9 movies together over the years. And so obviously something was working. We had mutual respect for each other's abilities. I mean, she was an amazing martial artist in her own right, forms champion, everything else. I had a very different style. Of course, she was a lot more flamboyant, like her flexibility, her kicks. I couldn't do that in another lifetime. I had my own kind of grounded, just hard-on style. And so it was a good balance from that point of view, male and female. And as you pointed out, we were items in some movies, and then like Lady Dragon, I was the bad guy. But we had enough respect. We knew we would look after each other. We wouldn't hurt each other, and do the best to make the best result on the camera and on screen. So yeah, Cynthia's actually coming out to Australia in February to do a little tour and everything. So that'll be fun to be able to catch up with.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Great. So did you have a preference in your film career playing the villain or the good guy?
Not really. And I'll tell you why. There's an old sort of joke around actors doing, and again, we're talking, don't get me wrong, to anyone watching this, there's no illusions that these were Academy Award winning movies. They were kind of low budget action films that suited a certain, genre and a certain audience and had their place. But I lost my train of thought then. Tell me again, what was I talking about? What did you ask me?
No, we were just talking about the genre, and like, do you have a preference as a villain or a good guy?
Oh, sorry. Got you.
Okay.
I still got jet lag, Brandon.
It's all good. It's all good.
I flew in from Australia 2 days ago. No, you know, there was a joke back then. That's what I was going to say. That, you know, the problem with playing the villain is you never got the lady, you never got the heroine, and you always died in the end or got the shit kicked out of you by the good guy.
Yeah.
It also meant, though, that you could almost do anything with your character because your job was almost to be unlikable, you know? As opposed to playing the good guy, you had to be likable. I mean, everybody had to root for the good guy, not so much the bad guy. So there was always that. But honestly, I look back and I look at my career, and people say, "Well, do you think it? Do you regret not holding out for more A-grade movies? Whether I could have got them or not, who knows?" But and I thought about it. I thought, no, you know, because it wasn't that important to me. You know, I always said, and I say today that I realized as an 11-year-old, the martial arts was going to be my passion and my through line for my life. And I know with my life that everything that happened good in my life has come as a result of that aim of just trying to be the best martial artist I could be. The bodyguard work for 20 plus years, 60, 70, 80 movies has come as a result of that. And I realized that if I was that serious about acting, I would have been in acting classes 6 days a week, or at least as much time as I was spending on the mat learning martial arts. And I wasn't doing that. So it was a means to an end. Acting for me was a way to just sort of make an income so I could spend more time training with the likes of, you know, Betty Okides, Pete Cunningham, whoever. Does that make sense? So
it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And the incredible journey and the people I've met as a result of a string of these lower budget and some bigger budget, by the way.
Yeah.
Of course, we talk about Mad Max and Fury Road.
Yeah, we will.
And all of those, but I have no regrets in that regard, you know. So getting back to your original question, whether it was a good guy or bad guy, it was a gig. And as long as I was able to sort of do 2 or 3 movies a year, I was in a good place, you know.
That's dope. Yeah. And it's funny you said that because it's interesting. 2 points is that we've gotten to a place in like, especially within the last 20 years where there's a line that's blurred between the good guy and the bad guy. Now, a lot of times we're rooting for the bad guy, like Tony Soprano or Jax Teller on Sons of Anarchy or all these shows, and even the Joker with Heath Ledger. And there's been like more of a blurred line now of like that good and bad. And a lot of people, when I'm in theaters watching cinema, are rooting for the bad guy to win as opposed to the good. So it's an interesting thing where 20, 30 years ago, that was not necessarily the case.
Yeah, and I think that's just due to writing and people's perceptions. Like, I love you know, I've had a lot of bad guy roles offered to me even over the last few years, and I'm very specific now in saying, look, I am not going to play a cliche bad guy where you know he's bad, he just scowls and walks around and beats people up. I think that's boring, you know, and not a put down, but even in the Hong Kong movies, it was obvious we were the bad guys. We had no redeeming features. We were there as cannon fodder for Jackie or Sammo or whatever at the end of the movie. And you knew that was your role. Now it's different. Like a lot of the bad guys now, they write them in a way. First of all, the lesson I learned as a bad guy is you never play being bad. You play a bad guy and you will justify all the so-called bad things you do because in your mind, you're not bad. You have a reason for it. Well, I was getting stepped on or bullied or whatever. So the interesting characters they write today just have a lot of light and shade in their characters, which is interesting for audiences. And let's face it, audiences are smart enough to know if they looked at their own characters, nobody's just carte blanche good or bad. Absolutely. There's redeeming features, there's good and bad. And so I think they enjoy a character that then tends to mirror a lot of what is pretty much in everyday life. And
very true. We're all flawed in many different ways.
Yeah, I got offered a role called Scar Tissue, which one of the best roles I've ever been offered. And it is a good guy role. It's a lead. We'll shoot it sometime next year. But the thing I love about it is the character is flawed. You know, yes, he's inherently good, wants to be good, but he's flawed, as are we all. And that's what makes it interesting on screen. You know, there's a bit of depth to that journey of that character, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy.
Most definitely. So, throughout your illustrious career, name a couple films of yours that are your personal favorites, like a couple that stand out to you from an acting standpoint, and even maybe from a fight coordinator or a stunt standpoint.
Well, that's a hard question because a lot of them are good for different reasons.
Yeah.
Meaning that the Hong Kong movie. Yeah. Well, first of all, let's go back to OCTAGON. It being my first movie, I mean, Keo was not supposed to be in any way a kind of a standout character. It just turned out that way, that I became almost like the first martial arts Darth Vader playing that role, getting to use the sai, an Okinawan weapon for those who know, things like that. I've got incredible memories and feel very proud of that being the first one. And for it doing well, and I think my performance was adequate,
Absolutely.
So you cut to, I did a few comedies. I produced a movie with a friend of mine, Paul Curry, in Melbourne, Australia, called Under the Gun. It was later called Iron Fist. Again, we had no money. Got to use a lot of local martial artists, including my original karate instructor, Tino, and we did a fight scene together. So that stands out for its own reasons. As I said, City Hunter, like, when I was in Hong Kong shooting the movies, I didn't know what else they were shooting except for what I was in. And it's only when you go to a screening and I'm like, oh my God, what a crack up this is, because it was often a character you would never normally play under your own steam. They are caricatures in those movies back then. And it just was so much fun. And it's also when for whatever reason, I don't ever watch the movies that I've been in. I might watch them the first time they come out, but something like Jim Carter, I mean, I can't believe how many people still like that movie or aware of that movie. So it's almost like, who am I to judge whether it's good or bad?
It's. I always say that. I said these movies were a generation, especially that time frame in the '90s, where again I was in love with every Tuesday going to the video store, and if it was you, Cynthia, Mark Dacascos, Gary Daniels, Don Wilson, all these movies were stacked up on every week, and it's like. Again, it wasn't for I didn't care about the Oscar movies or the Chariots of Fire, things like that. These were my films that I was into. And I was actually, it was funny you said that about like people asking you the question, were you upset that you didn't do maybe some bigger movies? I always was kind of bothered when I was growing up that I didn't see you and Cynthia and Dacascos in like bigger, like things that I would go, because I thought you guys deserved it. Like I thought that I love when Jackie movies started to come to America, but I also wanted to see, I love going to see Only the Strong and seeing Dacascos for the first time. And then obviously Mr. Nice Guy and some of the movies that you were in. But for me, it always bothered me as a kid. And I've even told like Dacascos and Olivier and some of those guys, it bothered me because you guys were on the same level, if not higher, than a lot of the action movies that we got on cinema. Like, and again, no disrespect to Van Damme and Seagal or whatever, but to me, it's oil and water. So, but yeah,
and it was also, it was a great era of filmmaking in what we call old school filmmaking. And we didn't have stunt doubles. Yes, there were a few on the Hong Kong movies, but it was almost for a different reason that people would think. In fact, Jackie once explained to me, because I said to him once when I had a double back on, I said, Jackie, I got better control than your boys do. First of all, he's used to them and he trusts them. He did trust me, but he literally said this is the only time they actually make decent money is when they're doubling a Guilo or a Westerner like myself. And I said, okay, I'm glad you explained that. That makes perfect sense. And I was quite comfortable with the idea based on that. Yeah, but it's I've done some dramatic roles even lately that I'm loving. I'm almost loving the idea of that more so than something that is based purely on action.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that's got to do with age. Yes, I can still do most things, but I'm certainly not going to be able to move like I did 20, 30 years ago. So I want to be realistic with the work I choose to do on camera. I feel that having lived, a life of 70 plus years, I'm a far better actor than I ever could have been when I started doing it, because you draw on life experiences when you play a character. And that's pretty interesting for me too. You know, that whole journey of just drawing on your life experience and giving a character a bit of depth and richness and everything else to what they say and do. But yeah, I mean, I can't even. Other than that, you know, Octagons, I said, the Chuck movies, all of that. No, there's a lot that I'm happy with. But again, as I said, for just various reasons.
Absolutely.
You know, and as you also know, I'm more age. You know, I used to sort of joke, you know, and say, "Oh, what are you doing next?" I said, "Well, you know, I was fight coordinator on the last couple of Mad Max movies on." Triple Frontier that I met Charlie Hunnam, and you know,
yeah, fantastic movie, yeah.
And you know, I just finished 6 months on the latest Mad Max shoot, which is going to be amazing.
Oh wow,
that's more because it's just happened to turn out that way, you know, because. You know, I sort of joked that unless you, at my age, you're probably going to play an aging gangster or somebody's grandfather, and you know, so, but that's okay, you know, because I'm still in the industry. I'm still being a martial artist and using my martial arts skills to help choreograph, train actors and everything else. So, hey, who couldn't be happy with that at this stage of the game?
Totally. Yeah. I enjoyed a couple months ago, I saw a movie called Rage that was a newer film, and I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting what it was, and I was like, I was thoroughly impressed. So I was like, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I loved it, and Rage was great. Shot it all in Melbourne, and a friend of mine produced, directed, and I was very happy with that. You know, playing the cop, but again, bit flawed and everything else, and relying more on, you know, as you know, there was virtually no fight scenes in that movie. So I love the challenge of that, you know, and obviously most of the time I was hired because of martial arts ability, but you also need to be able to carry that character or they're not going to use it. You'll be stuntman number 8 in the background otherwise. So,
it was a good performance. All right, so my week. So this is a weekly thing I do called One Sentence or Silence. Basically, what it is I throw out a name of someone you work with or you're acquainted with, and you give me a couple words, good or bad. And if you stay silent, that means they suck. And only 4 people in the history of my 30+ shows have stayed silent, with a couple people that were not good to them on sets or elsewhere. All right, so I'm going to start a name with yours that was not who he became at this time, but is a fantastic actor, Bryan Cranston.
Oh, fantastic! I mean, again, who knew? You only won a couple of words, but I can't help it. Yes, I mean, he was in a Michael Dudikoff movie. What was it called? Black Thunder, I think. You know, I'm a terrorist on an aircraft. I didn't know. Probably nobody else who knew who Bryan was then. And I noticed you had a little photo on that little clip there of
you choking him,
yeah. And it's only later on I'm like, oh, look at that. You know,
Walter White.
It's a bit like when we talked about Twinkle Twinkle, Michelle Yeoh. I mean, how huge is she now?
Oh, yeah.
She just did the little judo scene with Sammo in that. Andy Lau, who's amazing. Anyway, it goes on and on. So, sorry.
I'm a huge I.O.U. fan, and I really wish more people. I'm always telling people to watch those movies. Just some that are just him, and even the ones like Twinkle Twinkle, and he's so underrated in his business, like that. But he's a fantastic that deserves more accolades than just like I said. Sammo and Jackie are amazing as well, obviously, but I.O.U. is phenomenal as well. All right, the next name I'm going to say Don the Dragon Wilson.
Yeah, Don, old friend. We did a number of movies together. Still good friends to this day. So, yeah, no, fantastic. And a legitimate world champion kickboxer. So that's something, and a lot of so-called action stars who say, oh, world champion. And you go, well, no, you're not really. You know what I mean? But at least John has legitimate creds when it comes to being a martial artist.
Margot Robbie.
Oh, the best. Margot is just like your little Aussie next door neighbor. You know, I mean, she is the best. You know, I worked with Margot for a while, prepping her for the first Suicide Squad. Of course, we did the second one, and I just couldn't. I couldn't say anything bad about it. She is so committed. People often ask about someone like Margot about their careers. I said, there's a reason that they're just so amazing. It's their level of commitment. Now, my job is just to train her and give her the tools for a fight scene.
Yeah.
But when you get somebody, and I said to Margot, you know, even on Suicide Squad, I said, look, even if you just give me 10 minutes a night to help you with the tools, punching, kicking, likely tools that you're going to need in your fight scene, it'll all add up and make a difference to how you look on screen, because we want you to do 80-90% of your own stuff. And man, she would have 12-hour days and turn up night after night, you know, still with makeup on, and put in that time. Her level of and the excellence that she asks of herself is why she's so damn good. You know, she's
amazing.
A worker and the loveliest person, and so down to earth. You know, you would never know you were talking and acting with such an amazing star of cinema. You know, she's grounded, but again, her work ethic is second to none.
Great to hear.
Was that just 2 words, Brandon? You only want to
No, it doesn't have to be 2 words. It's just, I love this because it gives insight to these amazing individuals. The next one, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Stone Cold. I had some of the best fun with Stone Cold. You know, there was a film called The Condemned that I was fight coordinator on. I had a very close friend of mine, Sam Greco, who doubled Stone Cold. Sam was a world kickboxing champion. He was a K1 kickboxing champion and a Kyokushin world champion, built like a brick shit house, as you would need to be to double Stone Cold. So he was brought in, and I was Vinnie Jones's fight double as well as coordinator. And Vinnie Jones, as we know, lock, stock, and two smoking barrels, and on it goes. Man, it was non-stop practical jokes on that film. It never stopped. So, and Stone Cold, another one, because the director had said to me, I don't want Stone Cold to look anything like a world championship wrestler. I said, well, okay, that's all very well, you know. But again, he wasn't on, you know, when we worked together, I worked a lot on footwork, just throwing a punch for camera, all that sort of stuff. And again, totally committed, didn't have the ego to say, well, I'm not going to do that shit. This is what I do. And again, I'm always impressed when actors commit, because I've said to a few of them, listen, I don't need to do this. If you're not going to commit 100%, then basically don't waste my time. I wouldn't say this, you know, I'd like to say it that roughly, but you know, but Stone Cold was like that as well. You know, he did the work and put the time in, and he, after that, as you know, he did lots of you know, throughout. So
absolutely. All right. This was maybe in the younger days, but it would be interesting to hear a story or two. Mick Jagger.
Yeah. Well,
did you train Mick? Like, I saw that photo in the thing where did you actually train him, or was that?
I did. I ended up training Mick at like 4 a.m. in the morning after concerts, you know, because anyone who hasn't been on rock and roll tours, which would be most people, you know, when you do a concert, you're usually in a bus and you head off to another city to get ready for another show.
Yeah.
You're all amped up. The adrenaline's flowing in a whole different way, you know. And so these people, whether it's Stevie Nicks or Mick, they're up till all hours because they're night owls. And then you sleep rest of the morning and get ready for the next gig. But he was fascinated with martial arts. Listen, anyone who looks at Mick still today, what is he, nearly 80? Look at the energy that dude puts out on stage.
Yeah.
Incredible shape. Of course, he's about as wide as my finger, you know.
True.
Incredibly fit and so together. I mean, that guy, talk about smart and in control of all aspects of all things Stones. But he was a joy to be around, very down to earth, you know. And as I said, teaching him like reverse punches at 4 o'clock in the morning.
So I love that.
He, unfortunately for him, as he said, showed me a cane he had, which was one of those sword sticks. So it's like a walking stick, and you pull it out, and it's actually like a sword or a saber. To which I decide jokingly, I'm going to put it at his throat. Well, if you look at his face, he probably said, that's it. That's the end of the Stones. This is the end of my existence. He probably thought the mistake he ever make was giving a prankster like me something like that to play with. But yeah, great experience with Mick.
Charlize Theron.
Yeah, another one so committed. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but same thing.
No,
you know,
good to hear.
She trained very, very hard, wanted to be involved and do as much of her own action as she could in the Mad Max movie. I remember I did everything on Mad Max because you remember I played this Imperator, which was the same warrior class as her. Ended up doing a fight scene with Charlize and getting headbutted and thrown off the back of the Giga Horse. By the way, the headbutt, I was supposed to headbutt her, but I knew through talking with her, she had a really bad neck injury. And I said to George Miller, I said, well, snapping your head back like that is so hard on your spinal cord here, especially if you got a bad neck. So I suggested maybe she headbutt me, which she loved the idea of, and George did as well. So hence she ended up, and she, talk about control, she would just tap, because where the camera, I said, you need to put your head right on my left eyebrow. And man, she would just tap my head. And if you look at her face and those things, she's covered in blood because I've kind of kicked the crap out of her. Yeah. And the way she looked, my blood went cold, you know. And but I was going to say that I did everything to keep my hair, you know, because, you know, the way she ended up shaved, she had been training and everything. She's supposed to have dreadlocks, kind of long hair. She ended up suddenly sending George a picture of her with her head shaved. She just decided to shave it because she said, I'm this warrior woman. I wouldn't have all this hair. So she took that step. So cut to me working on George to try and keep my hair. I didn't want to look like a racing tadpole with no hair. So you know, and one day I'm on the set and I'm doing, well, Imperators, they're a warrior, they're a privileged class, they would have hair. And George suddenly says, and he's very gentle, George. He's like your gentle uncle. He says, oh, come with me, Richard. And he shows me a picture that Charlize has sent him with her shaved head. And that was his way of saying, sorry.
Yeah.
Gotta go.
Go see a barber, Richard.
I'm traumatized. I said, I haven't had hair that short since I was born. And when I met Charlize, I went over to her and I said, you know, this is your fault. And she grabs my cheek and says, oh, but look at those cheeks. You know?
That is amazing. Thank you for that. That's amazing. Will Smith.
Yeah, I love Will. I mean, God bless him. He's going through some shit at the moment. And, you know, I actually don't have really sympathy as he doesn't for what happened. Who knows why and all the causes, but I think it was a huge mistake, which again, he would acknowledge to this day. But forgetting all that, putting all that aside, I had the best time. I went and trained Will for quite a few months at his house in Los Angeles before we started Suicide Squad. Once again, the nicest guy, so inclusive, you know, a lot of fun. I ended up teaching him like this throat jab.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
And a bit of a chop, playing around with some of the stuff we would do to get him ready for the film. Well, that became the thing of the movie, not just me, but a lot of the other stunts. You'd standing there talking to someone, next minute you'd get chopped in the throat, and it'd be Will. And I'd be like, for fuck's sake, you know? It was a way of being funny that we ended up chopping each other in the throat for a whole damn movie. But a super nice guy. And I remember the producer on the first Suicide Squad, as this is an indication of his character, he said, I've never seen a cast so cohesive. And he said it was all due to Will. He became like the captain of the ship, made sure crew, cast, and everything felt like they were on the one team and all making the one movie together, you know, not aloof, not separate from. And I always appreciated that. And I mean, to give you an idea, I was in Australia and I suddenly saw in the news that Will Smith's at the tennis in Australia. I said, oh, shit. So I sent him a text and said, oh, Will, you know, Richard here in town. Straight away, he got back to me. I'm around at his hotel and off we go and watch the cricket, you know, in Australia together, and then traveled Melbourne looking at all this graffiti and artwork on walls. But like it was nothing for him to say, come on, Rich, let's go and have some fun. And I think that also is very indicative of his inclusive personality and the sort of person he is. You know, I've got nothing but great things to say about Will.
Awesome.
And also an amazing athlete, of course. You know, remember he played Muhammad Ali, so I already knew he would have a good grounding, you know, as far as all of that. But got him into a bit of jiu-jitsu and grappling, you know, along with the punching and kicking. So that was a lot of fun working with Will.
Awesome, awesome. All right, one more name. This I believe it was Tough and Deadly. Roddy Piper, the great late Roddy Piper. Yes.
Yeah, once again, looking back, how privileged was I to spend time with someone like Roddy? I mean, an absolute legend in the WWE world. Again, such an incredible athlete, tough as, and just a lot of fun. Again, I'm just so thankful. As I said to you earlier, yes, there were a lot of low budget movies, but that's very incidental to the acquaintances and friendships that I made on so many of these shoots that I feel so fortunate for. And Roddy Piper is one of those, amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, P, definitely. Say you made it through without.
The last one you didn't mention is Tom Hardy. I was one of the first to actually do jiu-jitsu with Tom when we were getting ready for the very first Fury Road. In fact, we shot Fury Road in 2013. Well, we started prepping a couple of years earlier. It got put back for various reasons of the value of the dollar or whatever it is. But he was literally sneaking out of George Miller script readings to come and do jits, as he calls it, with me, He starting to roll. And I don't know whether, for those who aren't aware, he's gone on with his jiu-jitsu journey, and he recently competed in 2 different jiu-jitsu tournaments.
Wow.
With gi and no gi, and won gold in both of them, I think, as a blue belt. And I thought,
whoa.
How good is that Tom, being who he is willing to just go out there as this movie star and put himself on the line, get on the mat and compete. And that's what I mean. It's daring to participate. It's very easy to sit in your armchair and sort of armchair expert and give an opinion on everybody else get out there. But do you have what it takes to get off your ass and get on the mat yourself? And for Tom doing that,
that is so great. That is so. You're inside my head, Richard, because that was my next question about Tom, and because I didn't know that about you, but I was going to ask you because I did so much research for this, but I saw that you trained. Like I saw Charlie Hunnam and Alex O'Loughlin from Hawaii Five-0, which I was a big admirer of. Did you train on top of? Did you train with those gentlemen as well as Tom, or were they just? I saw them in gis with you in different photos or whatever. So did you train those gentlemen as well, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously Tom, because of Mad Max and on it, I did a lot of training with Tom. And it was a fantastic experience, obviously. And as far as Charlie, well, I did Triple Frontier with Charlie, and I ended up being asked to do a bit of pre-work with Charlie before the movie. Mm-hmm. Hence, we got into grappling. Charlie loves grappling now. I mean, he's training with some Brazilian dudes. He's trained a lot with one of my original coaches, Higan Machado. Charlie's I think he might be a purple belt now, but incredible athlete once again. And we were in Hawaii shooting Triple Frontier, which again starred also Ben Affleck and a number of others. But I then was holding some sessions, and I forget how it came about, but the Hawaii 5-0, Lachlan came along, and he loves jiu-jitsu. He's a legit black belt. And
okay.
I ended up getting on the mat with him and with Charlie. And Charlie and I have become he's the best, man.
Talk about fantastic actor. Yeah.
Talent. He's just recently shot Shantaram in Melbourne, Australia. That's out streaming now. And he's in The Gentleman, et cetera, et cetera. But the nice, and this is again the nice part of this journey, as I said, is that not only do I often get to work with these people, often you form lasting friendships. And how good is that? I mean, when I came to the States in March, Charlie was the first one, no, come and stay with me, So I went and stayed for 3 weeks with Charlie at his house with his lovely fiancee, Morgana. And, it was just the best. I mean, we're going to have dinner actually tomorrow night with Charlie. And, what an artist and what a career he's not only had, but people, you got to watch out for that dude.
I think it's the tip of the iceberg with him. Yeah. As great as he was on Sons and some of the things I've seen him in, I think there's still a layer of just greatness that's in that guy.
What I told him, a little tidbit here, is that I actually read for the same role in Sons of Anarchy when the series first before it even first started. I mean, I told him that story and he kind of looks at me because obviously I'm a lot older than Charlie, but I was actually down to it. And it was only between a few of us. Of course, Charlie, rest his history, gets the role. And thank God he did, because I would have sucked compared to him, you know.
Oh, you read as him or Clay, like as Jack?
No, it was him as the character, you know, that he plays in Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did a reading in Australia, and we were getting down to the final bits, but of course, obviously, Charlie would get the role. Hey?
That is amazing. That is amazing. So one quick thing I want to ask you is that, because a couple of our guests have been married for a long time, and I've asked them, how do you've been married to your lovely wife Judy for a long time? What's the secret sauce? Like, I'm an unlucky guy in relationships, never been married, but what's the secret sauce of a long-lasting relationship?
I often tell people, if they ask me in Judy's ear, I say I'm a very tolerant and patient man. And that gets me clipped over the ear, as you can imagine. No, well, Judy and I have been together 36 years now. We've been married. We got married in 93. Mm-hmm. She's my soulmate. You know, it's just been the best journey and still continues. We just hang together. It's like we're joined at the hip. So I'm a very lucky man when it comes to that. And as far as why, some of it, I think, I often say to people, everybody wants the perfect partner, mm-hmm. But when you suddenly realize the imperfections and what you're asking that partner to accept in you, right, you're mm-hmm. far from perfect, so you realize, of course, there's going to be aspects of a character of a partner that's got to be okay. You've got to just love them anyway. I mean, the amount of, she's yelling out in the background. What'd you say? She says, like what? She wants to know what her imperfections are. We don't have enough time for that, girl. This is too short. See, I'll pop it again. No, but and I also, so, you learn that there's just buttons that you could press, and you just make a conscious decision not to create drama in your life. And of course, there's always going to be things come up that will cause issues. But I feel that so much of the time, people throw in the towel way too soon. I do know that every issue you have, whether big or small, you get through. And I know it sounds cliche, but it absolutely makes the relationship stronger, because you learn so much about that other person through that drama or whatever. And again, you either choose to make changes, or at least you bury it a little bit, and you put a little bit of control on the way you behave, and it's about communication. Like Judy will often say, oh, stop leaving that drawer open, I hate that. And I'll of course go, oh, bullshit, I don't leave the drawer open, what's wrong with you? I'll walk away, get all stubborn with male ego, but it will absolutely change my behavior, where if she's not there, I'll see that drawer and go, I better close the drawer. Sometimes it's just about good communication, and there's some things will drive each other nuts, but that's being a human being. And we also legitimately are just great mates. I mean, there's love, there's all that sort of stuff, but we're just legitimately good mates and legitimately care about each other. If we do something that upsets the person, it really hurts. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely. And we'll make amends. And Judy's better than I am at that, at letting things go and saying, oh, I'm sorry, I want to apologize for this or that. And that teaches me. She's listening now. I'm giving away too much shit.
It kind of harkens back to what you said at the beginning of the interview about never quitting, and like you didn't when you were on when you were fighting or whatever. When you don't quit, like, again, like, you can reap the benefits. So obviously you've reaped the benefits with a beautiful marriage, and again, in your career, because like, if you wouldn't have taken that advice from Linda, then, like I said, it's always kind of, you look back and you see those moments where it's like, okay, I've had a lot of people in my career that I've worked with that it's too hard, and we're not getting money to make a movie, or I don't get paid enough to be an actor or whatever. And I'm like, it's got to be in your blood. It's got to be something. I get up. I've been doing this 24 years, and I get up every day just wanting to do this and wanting to continue.
Passion, Brandon. What you have is passion, and you just need to find something you're passionate about in your life. I've often said that I believe so many people, and I'm generalizing, don't get me wrong here, but that a lot of people are just doing things daily that they hate. They're in a job they hate, and they can't wait to get to 60, 65 to achieve this or that and then retire and then start living. To which I say, well, good luck if you happen to make it. There's no guarantees there, you know. What you're talking about and what my life has been, I'm living my passion, you know, and everything good has come as a result of that. As I said earlier, well, that's fantastic, you know, and to have a partner, you know, like Jutes to share that with. I mean, it doesn't, we don't go out, we don't go to clubs, we don't go to bars. We're happy. Just some of the best times of my life were during COVID, was sitting on the couch, binge watching Netflix with, and I
just enjoying each other, just enjoying company.
That's the balance I want in my life. I mean, she gives me the shit sometimes, but I just give her a bit of this, awesome. And that fixes it all up, mate.
So Richard, the next there's only a couple more questions, but I always ask every guest, like this is the once a week thing. If you had a blank check, or if a blank check was put in front of you and you could star in any movie, what would that role be, and what would that film be?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think it's not far off what I was talking about. This friend of mine, Andrew McKenzie, has a script called Scar Tissue. Just because he's the good guy, as a retired vet, you know, he's retired. It's almost like Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood.
Oh, one of my all-time favorite films.
Written for the States. It's now set in Outback Australia, and he's a guy that's retired to the Outback. He's sworn off violence because of he's being, you know, what he was. He brought back a lot of anger from his time as a prisoner of war. Which war? We're still deciding. He said, which war did he say? I said, geez, I'd have to be 90 years old to have been in that war. But anyway, the point being that he's a flawed character. He comes back, his wife's dead, and that's due to a bit of road rage that he's responsible for because of the anger he brought back with him. He's got a daughter that's estranged because of what happened to her mother. True actions of mine, and I'm trying to make amends for all of that. Cut to, I'm in this town running a sort of a supply store, and corrupt sheriff and everybody else is literally pressing my buttons all the way through until I finally go off like a firecracker, you know, and kill 90 people or whatever. But
nice.
I just that's a sort of role, and it doesn't need to be about budget, by the way. It's just about the character, you know. And I'm just loving the idea again of playing flawed characters, but the chance to use my age and life experience to sort of invest in that character. So we'll
you're going to shoot this next year? You're going to shoot this next year?
Yeah, sometime next year. It was going to be March, but who knows? You know what that's like.
Awesome. Yeah.
Throw everything against the wall and hope something sticks. There's another martial arts, kids martial arts movie that I've been asked to take part in. It might even be in January. And then they're acting roles, which I'm excited about. And there's also some more, you know, fight coordinating stuff coming up. And hey, so at this stage of the game, to still even be in the industry is, again, feel blessed. So life is good and the journey continues.
Awesome. Well, like I said, you bled into my next question, which was what's upcoming next. But so my last question is, I always do this every episode, is that ask the guest to give some words of wisdom. We have a lot of filmmakers and aspiring actors, stuntmen, fight choreographers that watch the show. So can you just give some words of wisdom, whether uplifting or not, about this crazy business we're in?
I think if I was to pass on where both Judy and I are at the moment, is finding balance in our lives. And by that I mean, you know, I was watching we were watching some guru, whoever was talking about, just say you're 60 years of age and you've, whatever you have at that time, the amount of effort and work you've put in to get to that stage of your life and the amount of hours you've invested, why would you continue to invest that much time when you're probably not going to live long enough to even enjoy a part of it? Meaning there's got to be a stage where you're okay with enough is enough. You know, you're happy, relationship, you got a little house or whatever, and you get by, as opposed to, no, I have to have this car, that house, this, and always be in a future story about what you need in order to achieve happiness. And we're just trying to be in the moment more. We love listening to Eckhart Tolle. You know, he wrote the book called The Power of Now and In the Moment. And it really makes sense that just like what's happening right now, because this moment is the only thing that's real. Tomorrow might happen, might not for you. You know, next week, it's all a future story. And it's the same as living only in the past about what sort of made you what you think you are. Only thing that's real is right now, and just be aware of that. Be aware of friends. I know it's again cliche, people that are important to you, that you love. Just make time to spend time with them and enjoy that little drink or that coffee or whatever, rather than always being in this future turmoil. You know, I've often said this: people will walk along a beach and it can be the most beautiful sunset, and they'll be oblivious because they're in their heads about what they've got to do tomorrow and next week, and they miss this soul enriching experience that's free. It's right there. You just got to look up and take. Don't even give it a name. Don't character. Just go, how amazing is that? And that's what we're doing, is just trying to get a balance, not be ridiculously searching for the next job or work. Yes, great if it happens. But I look at Mad Max, sure, what an amazing experience, but I'm still away from home. It's still another 6 months out of my life.
Yeah.
And I would say that, at 73, even if I live to be 100 and I have perfect health, perfect, I'm lucid and everything else, it's still way less than a third of the 2/3 that I've already lived. So one would hope that I'd be very careful about how I spend that time. And I think the universe sometimes taps us on the shoulder. We get a bit of an illness, we get an ulcer, we get whatever it is that taps you. You keep ignoring and allowing too much stress in your life until next time it just smacks you in the head with a sledgehammer, and you become you might be cancerous or whatever it is. And it's usually at that time that people go, you know what, rather than wanting those 5 things, those material things, all I want to do is get well. If I could just get well. And I think we need to realize that before the fact and be a part of our own health care and a strong immune system by just not overstressing about too much irrelevant shit going on. I mean, the last thing I'd say is we have a saying that for us now in the last few years, if someone or something doesn't add value to our lives, I hate to be crude, but fuck off. I wish you all the best, but just don't bring that drama into my life. And that's one of the things that I would pass on. And find a passion. Try and find something you're passionate about, and care what it is that makes you want to get up every day. Like you talked about, I can't wait to get up and just try and learn something new in my martial arts world. That's what makes you get up. I think a lot of people don't have that, but you can. You've just got to make an active choice to go after it.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautifully stated. Good energy, passion, and again, that's what I've worked on a lot the last couple of years, is just weeding out the riffraff and all the bad energy and that's holding me down, and just kind of, because again, some people aren't on the journey. Some people are there to teach you a lesson along your journey, but like they're not heading to where I'm going as far as my career and what my lofty goals are. So, and you stated that perfectly, though, as far as what you meant by like certain people doesn't make them bad people, but they're just not on the same trajectory that I'm on, as far as, or you're on, or you and your wife or different people are. So they have to kind of step aside and go on their own path.
Yeah, and of course, listen to people, take input, but there's a great saying that someone else's opinion of you has nothing to do with you. It usually says more about them than it does about you. And I'm the same. We all do it, but we're trying less and less to get involved in what somebody else thinks about my life. It's my life. It's my journey. You know what I mean? Now, having said that, you also need good friends that I believe a good friend will absolutely be honest with you and tell you when he thinks you're fucking up, right?
Absolutely.
That's a great thing, and be open enough to take that on and don't get all obstinate against that, so on and so on. But yeah, it's just your journey. People get dictated too much by online. Of course, we know with Twitter, with Facebook and everything, they're faceless keyboard warriors that often will determine how a lot of these people feel each day of their lives by what's been said about them, the criticism, how they look or whatever. Fuck that, just be you. Get on, make the improvements. I mean, again, you're talking about Judy and I. Thank God we're on the same wavelength. Judy's total vegan. I was for a while. She was vegan since she was 8. My eating's modified, but You know, Judy will get up and do 2 hours yoga every morning at 5 o'clock. I don't even know who I am at 5 o'clock in the morning, but she'll do that. But we've got similar habits. In other words, I would advise people to also, you know, you're looking at COVID and everything and vaccines and the whole rest of it. Well, the first defense is your own health and immune system, losing a bit of weight, getting some cardiovascular fitness, getting some muscular strength and everything. That's your best defense. So, you know, I'm getting every day now. I have a cold shower. I love the Wim Hof, you know, cold therapy. We do the breathing, you know, pretty much every day, most days, not religiously now, but Wim Hof breathing every day. The cold showers, very careful. We do intermittent fasting. In other words, they're things that you can control and make a decision to do for your life. Not, oh, yeah, I need to try that sometime. Because again, it's only when you get knocked down by the universe giving you a sickness and an illness that puts you in a hospital bed that you'll go, God, I wish I'd been a little more aware and perceptive of what I need to do to keep my mental and physical health. You know,
it's very true. Very true. So, Richard, where can our audience find you online? The website, social media? Do you?
Yeah, I have a, you know, richardnorton.net, I think. But, you know, it's websites, you know, I've gone a little bit out of vogue. So I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. There's a fans page because, you know, Instagram have 5,000. Yeah. Mind you know, a lot of people I don't know, they're in the martial arts world and they want to be friends. So I add them on just to let people know I'm still alive. You know? So that'd be the main way to find me. You can always, if anyone needs to, they can always message me on Facebook, even if they're not on the friends thing. And I try and get back to as many people as I can because I'm thankful to have those people out there that actually care that I still exist. So.
Hey man, hey, you very much exist, my friend. You're a legend. You're an icon. Thank you for all the great cinema you've given us and for what you're continuing to do. I hope, like you said, I hope to share a drink with you at some point in our futures, and hopefully we can work together in the near future. Have some projects that have your name on them, hopefully. So we'll stay in touch, and like I said, keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for those great words of wisdom for our audience, and thank you for taking this time today to come on the network and drop some knowledge to our audience about your career and about what's going on with you now. And again, thank you so much, sir.
Oh, you're welcome, Brandon, and I appreciate you having me on, and all the very best to everybody out there that's tuning into this. Just be the best version of you. It'll be different to everybody else, and that's completely okay. But do what you can do, best version of you.
Awesome. Happy holidays to you and Judy. And again, hopefully we can share the same space at some point. Take care, everybody. Richard Norton, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, sir.